The studio lights beamed down, illuminating the sleek, modern set where millions of viewers would soon be watching. The audience murmured in anticipation as the crew rushed to make final adjustments. Across from the talk show host, poised and confident, sat Maya Bennett. A self-made entrepreneur, she had built her skincare brand from the ground up, revolutionizing the beauty industry with innovative, inclusive products. Her business had grown from a small online shop into a multi-million-dollar company, celebrated for its high-quality, ethically sourced ingredients and its mission to empower women of all backgrounds. At the center of it all sat the infamous talk show host, Mark Reynolds, known for his sharp tongue and controversial remarks. Mark leaned back in his chair, flashing a smirk that many had come to recognize as the prelude to one of his signature takedowns. "So, Maya, tell us, what's it like being a minority business owner in an industry dominated by, well, let's be honest, people who don't look like you?" Maya tilted her head slightly, recognizing the underlying tone of condescension in his voice. She had faced people like him before, people who underestimated her, who questioned her legitimacy, who thought they could rattle her. But she had built her empire brick by brick, and she wasn't about to let some talk show host shake her foundation. "It's exactly what you'd imagine, Mark," she said smoothly. "It's tough, competitive, and requires an immense amount of resilience. But the best part? Watching people underestimate me, only to realize too late that I'm already 5 steps ahead." The audience let out an approving murmur, some even applauding. Mark's smirk faltered for just a second, but he quickly recovered. "Oh, come on," he said with a chuckle. "You're telling me there haven't been any special advantages for you? These days, it seems like companies are practically throwing opportunities at minority-owned businesses just for diversity points." Maya's eyes flickered with amusement. "That's an interesting perspective, Mark. I guess you'd say the same about the advantages given to people who look like you for generations. The head starts, the exclusive networks, the inherited wealth. If you believe in fairness, then surely you'd want to talk about that too." The audience erupted into cheers, and even a few of Mark's crew members exchanged looks. He shifted in his seat, clearly not expecting Maya to turn his argument back on him so effortlessly. He forced a laugh. "Well, I didn't mean it like that. I'm just saying, do you think your success is really just about talent, or do you think it's also about the current political climate?" Maya leaned forward slightly, her voice unwavering. "I built my company from nothing, Mark. I didn't inherit wealth, I didn't have connections in the industry, and I certainly didn't have doors open for me just because of who my parents were. What I had was vision, hard work, and a refusal to let people like you define my worth. Now, if you're suggesting that talent alone isn't enough, then we should really be questioning why so many less qualified people have been at the top for so long." A stunned silence filled the room, followed by roaring applause. Mark opened his mouth, then shut it, clearly outmatched. He had invited Maya onto his show expecting an easy target, but instead, he had walked right into a battle he was ill-equipped to fight. Later that night, Maya sat in her office, sipping tea as she watched the numbers rise on her company's website. Orders were pouring in, and the public support was overwhelming. She smiled to herself, knowing that this moment was bigger than just her. It was proof that confidence, intelligence, and integrity could dismantle even the most persistent forms of prejudice. Mark Reynolds, for all his arrogance, had just given her the best marketing campaign she could have ever asked for. And as she closed her laptop for the night, she knew one thing for sure: this was only the beginning. The following weeks solidified Maya's rising influence. Major media outlets reached out for interviews, praising her eloquence and strength in the face of condescension. Her skincare brand saw record-breaking sales, and investors showed renewed interest in expanding her reach to international markets. Maya, however, remained focused on her mission, ensuring her brand continued to empower and uplift women from all walks of life. Meanwhile, Mark found himself at the center of controversy. Critics and former fans alike dissected his interview tactics, calling him out for his blatant attempt to belittle a successful black woman on national television. Sponsors of his show began pulling out, wary of the growing backlash. While he initially tried to brush it off as just another internet overreaction, the numbers spoke for themselves. His viewership plummeted, and rumors swirled about the network reconsidering his contract. One evening, as Maya prepared for a keynote speech at a business summit, she received an email from Mark's producer requesting a follow-up interview. Apparently, he wanted to set the record straight. Maya chuckled, shaking her head. She had no interest in helping him redeem himself. Her energy was better spent elsewhere, building, innovating, and inspiring. As she stepped onto the stage, greeted by thunderous applause, Maya knew one thing with absolute certainty: this was her moment, and she was just getting started. Mark's downfall continued as pressure mounted from the media and the public. The network, desperate to salvage its reputation, eventually announced that his show would be under review. In industry terms, everyone knew what that meant: his days were numbered. More people came forward with their own stories of how Mark had used his platform to degrade and humiliate guests under the guise of entertainment. The facade he had built over years was crumbling at an unstoppable pace. On the other hand, Maya continued her rise, securing partnerships with major beauty retailers and expanding her company's philanthropic initiatives. She launched mentorship programs for aspiring young entrepreneurs, particularly women of color, determined to ensure that the next generation wouldn't have to fight as hard as she had to claim their place at the table. Months later, Mark officially lost his show. A new host, known for their thoughtful and engaging approach, replaced him. The contrast was stark, and the ratings reflected that audiences were ready for a change. Mark, now a disgraced former host, attempted to pivot to online content, but the damage to his reputation was irreparable. His name became synonymous with outdated, toxic media tactics, while Maya became a household name, a beacon of resilience and excellence. As Maya looked back at that fateful interview, she realized it was never just about shutting down a rude talk show host. It was about proving, once and for all, that no one could define her success but herself. And with the world watching, she had done just that. As the months passed, Maya's influence continued to grow, not just in the beauty industry, but across various sectors. Her keynote speeches became highly sought after, and she was invited to speak at prestigious events, from tech conferences to women's empowerment summits. Her voice was now heard on a global scale, and she used it to push for systemic changes within industries that had long been resistant to diversity and inclusion. But Maya never let the accolades get to her head. She remained grounded, always recalling the early days of her business, working late nights, making sacrifices, and dealing with doubts from people who didn't believe in her. She stayed connected with the very women who had helped her build her empire, often holding intimate gatherings where young entrepreneurs could get advice and share their own challenges. Her company was thriving, but Maya knew that true success wasn't measured in revenue alone, it was in the lasting impact she could make on the lives of others. So, in addition to expanding her product line and reaching new markets, she launched a series of charitable initiatives aimed at supporting women and communities of color in underserved areas. She funded scholarships for young women interested in entrepreneurship, mentored girls in inner-city schools, and partnered with nonprofit organizations to provide mentorship and career development for women of all backgrounds. While Maya's rise was unstoppable, not everyone in the industry was thrilled with her success. Some of the larger beauty corporations, threatened by her growing dominance, started to take more direct actions to counter her. They released products similar to hers, attempting to capitalize on the demand for ethical, inclusive skincare. But Maya was prepared. She had anticipated that the giants of the industry would try to co-opt her approach, and she made sure her brand remained authentic, focused on quality, never compromising on her mission. She didn't just want to be another company, she wanted to be the change the industry needed. Every product she released, every campaign she launched, had a deeper message attached. It was never just about beauty, it was about embracing who you were and honoring the stories that shaped you. And as the media buzzed around her, something else began to shift. More women of color were becoming entrepreneurs, seeing in Maya a role model who had proven that it was possible to break through, to challenge norms, and to rise above the challenges they faced. She became a symbol of what was possible, showing them that they, too, could succeed on their own terms. Then one day, Maya received an unexpected message, this time, from an unexpected source. Mark Reynolds, the man who had tried to tear her down on national television, was seeking a meeting. Curious but cautious, Maya agreed. She wasn't one to hold grudges, but she also wasn't about to let someone back into her circle who hadn't earned it. When they met, Mark was a stark contrast to the arrogant, sharp-tongued host he had once been. The man sitting before her looked humbled, almost remorseful, and seemed genuinely interested in finding a way to make amends. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," Mark said, his voice soft and uncharacteristically humble. "I've read everything that was said about me, and I can't say I didn't deserve most of it. I've realized that I've been part of the problem for far too long. The way I treated people, the way I perpetuated harmful narratives, it's all been wrong. And you showed me that. You made me see it." Maya listened, her expression unreadable. She didn't need to say much, she could tell Mark was truly reflecting on his actions. Still, she wasn't ready to simply forgive and forget. "I'm not here to absolve myself," Mark continued, his eyes earnest. "But I want to help. I want to be part of the solution, not the problem. I've spent too much of my career putting people down for sport. If you'll allow me, I want to use my platform for good, highlighting the voices of people who've been overlooked, supporting causes that matter. I know I've got a long way to go, but I want to start making it right." Maya studied him for a moment, sensing the sincerity in his words. She had no illusions about him changing overnight, but part of her believed in the possibility of redemption. After all, she had fought hard for others to have second chances, and maybe, just maybe, it was time for him to have one as well. "I'll help you," Maya said finally. "But you have to do the work. No shortcuts. And you need to listen, really listen, to the people you've wronged." Mark nodded, his expression determined. "I'm ready." In the weeks that followed, Mark took steps to rebuild his reputation. He reached out to people he had wronged in the past, offering apologies and working with organizations focused on diversity and inclusion. His efforts were met with skepticism at first, but over time, his actions began to speak louder than his words. And though some would never fully forgive him, others saw his transformation as a sign of genuine growth. As for Maya, she kept pushing forward, never looking back. She had built her brand and reputation on authenticity, and she wasn't about to let anyone, or anything, derail her vision. She continued her work, unapologetically pursuing her dreams while also lifting up others along the way. In the end, her legacy wasn't just about the empire she had built. It was about the lives she had changed, the barriers she had shattered, and the message she had sent to the world, that success wasn't about who you were supposed to be, but who you chose to become.